Batman Begins was released in 2005 and was directed by Christopher Nolan and stars Christian Bale as the Dark Knight. And in this movie, we see a reimagining of the Caped Crusader's origin in which he sees his parents murdered and decides to become a symbol of justice. With the release of The Batman just weeks away, it is time I finally tackle the Nolan Trilogy. This is one of the greatest trilogies of all time and some of the greatest superhero movies and some of the best movies ever made. So I can't wait to talk about these movies and also give my thoughts on the positives and the negatives of this trilogy. But let's start with Batman Begins. And the biggest positive of this movie is Christian Bale as Batman and Bruce Wayne. I've been noticing that people have been trashing Christian Bale's performance, saying, oh, he's not a good Batman. He wasn't a good Batman at all. I actually disagree. I can't believe I have to come to his defense. I didn't feel like he needed defending, but apparently he does. Christian Bale was a great casting choice for Batman and Bruce Wayne. I think he brings the best balance so far of this taping of this video, because obviously the Batman hasn't come out yet with Robert Pattinson, but out of all the live action actors that we've gotten, so far Christian Bale has brought the perfect balance of Bruce Wayne and Batman. He really understood how Batman and Bruce Wayne are two totally different characters in this movie. Doing a live-action Batman is so difficult, but also doing a live-action Batman where Batman is set in a real-world universe, because the reason why I say that is every movie before Batman Begins came out had a very comic booky look to it, whether it's Tim Burton's wonderful colors, or of course you had Joel Schumacher's universe where it was the campy dialogue and all that stuff. This was Nolan taking a realistic tone of Batman. So Bale had to do something different. He had to look different and he acted different, but he still kept the main basis of who Batman is as an identity, and he knocked it out of the park. What I love so much about Bale's Batman is that he uses fear as a tactic. Before Batman Begins came out, really, Keaton's first Batman movie was where we saw people actually legitimately terrified of the thought of Batman. Or like, oh, he's not real. Then when he shows up, he's like, whoa, it's like a horror show. This was the first time where we saw Bruce Wayne use fear as a tactic, because Batman, he's human at the end of the day. He has no superpowers whatsoever. So to use fear in theatrics, it makes Batman, it adds to the myth, it adds to the legend. That way, word of mouth of fear, it actually adds to the mystique that is Batman. I loved how Nolan used that, and I loved how Bale enforced that in the movie. Another thing I loved about this movie is the exploration of Bruce becoming Batman. Every other movie, I know I've been saying that a lot, every other movie before this was just, oh, my parents died. And then that was it, really. But they never really showed how he became Batman. Where did he go from kid alone in the middle of an alley, in Crime Alley where his parents died, to being the Caped Crusader? What happened in between? And Nolan explored that in the best way possible. I love the grueling process of him learning martial arts, of him, learning theatrics, using fear, all that stuff. It was so cool to see at least this interpretation of how Bruce Wayne became Batman. I thought that was a nice touch. Get ready to hear this a lot throughout the trilogy, but the villain in this movie was so good. I love Cillian Murphy. He is such a great actor, and he knocked it out of the park as Scarecrow. Now, I know Murphy at first auditioned for Batman, and you can actually see his audition on YouTube. I believe they were wearing, was it Kilmer's outfit? Whatever the last outfit was. I don't think it was Clooney's, but they were wearing the outfit and they were auditioning. And Cillian Murphy had an interesting take on Batman, but I think he fit the mold of Scarecrow more. He just had that unhinged look about him. And I think the mask they used for Scarecrow, the way they used the fear toxin, again, Nolan taking the realistic take on these cartoon superheroes and villains from comics. You have to take it. It's not going to be exactly accurate to the comics because you can only do so much when you're trying to take a realistic take on a character. But I personally loved what Crane did in this. How I feel like Crane and Scarecrow, because he's like a B to C list villain in the Batman universe, I just liked how they made him seem more threatening, more fearful, pun intended, in this movie. And I think Cillian Murphy's performance helped Scarecrow become a more notable villain in the Batman universe. Liam Neeson is another positive for his take on Ra's al Ghul. Now, don't get me wrong, out of everybody in the trilogy of the Nolan verse, I would say Ra's al Ghul is the most different from the comics, because Ra's al Ghul very much deals with the mystic forces and the Lazarus Pit. They don't really explore that at all in this movie. They do a little bit in The Dark Knight Rises in like a couple of scenes, but for the most part, he's doesn't really deal with mystical forces. It's more martial arts and, you know, theatrics and all that stuff. I think Ra's al Ghul was utilized very well in this movie. Like I said, becoming a mentor to Bruce Wayne and him being the overall villain. Spoilers if you haven't seen this movie. It's been out since 2005. Yes, Ra's al Ghul was revealed to be the overall villain for those of you who don't understand Ra's al Ghul as a character. Now let's talk about the Tumbler. Okay, by far, this doesn't look like a Batmobile per se if we're looking at aesthetic wise, but by God, I love this machine. Like, if somebody came up to me and said, look, here are all the Batmobiles ever made, which one do you want? I'd be like, give me that Tumbler. That looks like the best thing to ride. I still think the animated series Batmobile is the best looking and is truly the Batmobile. But man, the Tumbler is a personal favorite of mine. I love it. The sound of it, the look of it, it just looks cool. You're telling me you don't want to drive that down a freaking highway? That looks like so much fun. And it just fit Christian Bale's Batman, and it fit the Nolanverse perfectly. So the Tumbler, you have a special place in my heart. Now let's go into the mixed aspect of Batman Begins, and it's definitely Bale's Batman voice. I feel bad because here's the thing, I actually like his voice, but the problem is because it's been memed to death by everybody, you know, you just can't help but laugh anytime he starts talking in this movie, where he's just like, swear to me, you just, it kind of makes me laugh how Bale actually hurt his voice a lot in Batman Begins when trying to do the Batman voice. From what I've seen, every Batman actor has struggled to find their Batman voice, and, you know, Bale is no exception. He had trouble finding his voice. And I think it fit this Batman look, but at the same time, because it's been memed so much, it's just very difficult to take the voice seriously now. When you look back at it and you try to watch the movie and you just can't help but laugh when you think about all the videos you've seen and all the parody videos you've seen, you just can't help but laugh at Batman's voice. I'm also a bit mixed on the hand-to-hand combat scenes. Look, the shaky cam, I know Marvel, people like to criticize Marvel for it, but man, it's really bad here. The only fight scene that I thought it fit was when he was first revealed in the bat suit. You know, when he's like, where are you? The here part, that was really cool. Because it showed from the criminal's perspective of what they're seeing while they're being beaten up. You truly don't know what you're seeing as you're seeing a fist go right to your face and you're being knocked out by a dude dressed like a bat. So I like that. But every fight scene, in terms of hand-to-hand combat, these close-ups, the shaky cam, the quick cuts, it just didn't fit for me. It was very disorienting. You kind of get a headache halfway through. So I would say it was very mixed in terms of the hand-to-hand combat and using Batman from a fighting perspective. In terms of negatives, I really only have one glaring negative, and it's just Rachel Dawes as a character. I'm not going to knock Katie Holmes. I think she's a good actress. The only thing is that she just didn't fit. I don't know what it is, but every time I saw Rachel Dawes and Bruce together, it just didn't work for me. I think Katie Holmes and Christian Bale had okay chemistry. It wasn't amazing, but it probably got a little bit worse in The Dark Knight. But it was just the one thing Nolan couldn't get right in this trilogy was the romance of Rachel Dawes and Bruce Wayne. I think it was really good in The Dark Knight Rises with Bruce dealing with the aftermaths of The Dark Knight, but I'm getting too far ahead of myself. But for Batman Begins, it was just a generic thing that they're childhood friends and that Bruce has always liked her, and you don't really know if Rachel liked him till you find out to the end of the movie, but then she's like, no, I don't think this is going to work out. So it's like, it doesn't hurt the film, but it doesn't by any means help the film. So that's the one only glaring negative I see in Batman Begins. Overall, guys, I love Batman Begins. It is such a rewatchable Batman film. It's so enjoyable. The chemistry Christian Bale has with everybody is great. I love his Batman. I love his take on Bruce Wayne. It's a great looking film. I'm going to give Batman Begins an A-. A great film with amazing characters and amazing themes for people to think about. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.